You're sitting there tonight with two tabs open. One boat looks perfect in the photos, the other costs $11,000 less, and the seller keeps calling it a steal. You want the one that lets you sail away, not the one that eats your savings in a boatyard. Here's what I found after putting 5 popular cruising boats under the same cold light. The cheapest boat on your short list is almost never the cheapest to own, and the most beloved blue water legend on that list hides a build-year trap that can cost you $30,000 before you leave the dock. I know because I chased the survey records, the refit logs, and the resin history myself. Stay with me, because the boat that wins this comparison is not the one you expect, and the deciding factor comes down to a single detail on the hull that most buyers never check. I will name the exact model year that separates a dream from a money pit. Whether you're buying your first cruiser or trading up to your second, this is the honest ranking. Nobody at the dock will run for you. I remember kneeling in the bilge of a Valiant 40 a few winters back, moisture meter in one hand, flashlight in the other, watching the needle climb into the red along a hull that the listing swore was bone dry. That moment is why I made this. Let me show you what the glossy listings leave out. Let me start with the boat that pulls in more first-time buyers than any other, because it's cheap, it's everywhere, and the price tag looks like a gift. The Catalina 30. Frank Butler started building these in 1972 out in Woodland Hills, California, and by the time the run wound down, more than 6,000 of them had splashed. That number matters. When 6,000 of anything exists, the used price stays low, parts stay available, and every broker has one to move. You can find a saleable Catalina 30 today for $18,000 to $25,000, and the listing will tell you it's a proven family cruiser. Here's what the listing won't tell you. The Catalina 30 was built as a coastal boat, and the honest comparison starts with what that word actually cost you. The early hulls used a shallow bilge and a spade rudder hung on a fiberglass stock, and I've pulled survey reports showing rudder stock cracking on boats that spent their lives in open water instead of protected bays. The bulkhead tabbing, where the interior structure bonds to the hull, works loose over decades of pounding. On paper, it's a $20,000 boat. In practice, if you want to take it offshore, you're rebedding the chain plates, reinforcing the rudder, and chasing deck leaks that soften the balsa core under the side decks. So does that kill it? No. And this is where I have to be fair, because I've sailed a well-kept Catalina 30, and it's a genuinely pleasant boat for what it is. If your dream is the Chesapeake, the Great Lakes, or weekend hops down the coast, this boat wins on one criterion no other contender on my list can touch, and that's total cost of entry. You buy in cheap, you sail this season, and parts are a phone call away. But the moment you say the word ocean, the Catalina 30 falls to the back of the pack, and that raises the real question. If cheap coastal boats can't cross an ocean, what does a real ocean boat cost to own once the honeymoon ends? Because the next contender was built to answer exactly that, and its listing hides a very different kind of bill. The Pearson 365. Bill Shaw designed this one, and Pearson Yachts built it in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, starting in 1976. This is a bigger, heavier, more serious boat than the Catalina. A catcher sloop with a full skeg-hung rudder and a hull that feels planted when the wind pipes up. You'll find them listed between $30,000 and $45,000, and the seller will lean hard on the words solid and blue water. The hull usually is solid. That's the good news, and it's real. Pearson laid up thick, honest fiberglass in that era, and I've seen 365s with original hulls that survey clean at nearly 50 years old. But here's the finding that flips the math, and it's the thing I wish more buyers weighed before they fell in love. The Pearson 365 used a balsa cord deck, and the original hull-to-deck joint was fastened and bedded in a way that leaks as the sealant ages. Water gets into that balsa, it spreads under the deck hardware, around the stanchion bases, along the cabin trunk, and once balsa core is wet, you're not caulking a leak. You're cutting open the deck, digging out sodden core, drying the laminate, and glassing in new material. I priced that job on a real boat. A professional deck recore on a boat this size runs from $15,000 to well past $25,000 depending on how far the rot spread. Do it yourself and you'll save labor, but you'll spend a full season on your knees with a grinder and a respirator. So the $35,000 Pearson that looked like it beat the Catalina on seaworthiness suddenly carries a hidden line item that can double your real cost of ownership. That's the villain starting to show its face, and it isn't a person yet. It's a comparison nobody runs for you. The listing shows purchase price. The listing never shows deck core cost. So the boat that looks more expensive up front can actually be cheaper to own. And the boat that looks like a bargain can bleed you dry. And no broker is going to draw you that chart because no broker profits from scaring you off a sale. So how do you know before you buy whether that core is wet? Hold that question, because it's the exact thing the third contender forces us to solve, and it's also the thing you can check on a boat you already own without paying anyone a dime. The Cape Dory 36. Carl Alberg drew this one, and Cape Dory built it in Taunton, Massachusetts from the late 1970s into the mid-80s. Alberg was old school, long overhangs, a full keel with the rudder hung right off the back of it, heavy displacement, a narrow beam that heels early and then locks in like it's on rails. Buyers who love this boat really love it, and they'll pay $40,000 to $60,000 for a clean one. The Cape Dory answers the deck core problem in the most direct way possible. Many of them were built with solid fiberglass hulls and far less core deck area than the production boats, which means less balsa to rot and less to fear. That's a genuine point in its favor, and on the criterion of long-term structural peace of mind, the Cape Dory jumps to the front of my ranking. This is a boat that can sit at a mooring for 30 years and still survey sound through the hull. But here's the paradox, and it's the kind of thing that only matters after years at sea, not on a test sail. The very traits that make the Cape Dory tough also make it slow and wet. That full keel and heavy displacement mean this boat does not go to weather quickly, and in light air you will motor while lighter boats sail. The bronze seacocks and bronze ports that owners brag about are beautiful and they last, but when they finally need service, bronze fittings and period-correct hardware cost real money, and I've watched owners spend $3,000 just refitting original bronze seacocks that seized. The Alberg design also gives you less interior volume than a modern boat of the same length, so the 40-year-old aboard says, cozy, and the 60-year-old aboard says, my back. So the Cape Dory wins on toughness and loses on speed and space, and that's a fair trade for some of you and a deal breaker for others. But I promised you something you can act on tonight, and this is where I need every one of you who already owns a boat to lean in, because the next part is built for you specifically. If you're sitting there thinking this whole comparison only helps people who haven't bought yet, stay with me, because I'm about to hand you a test you can run on your own boat this weekend. No broker, no haul out, no survey fee. Remember that wet deck core that can quietly cost $20,000? You can hunt for it yourself right now. Take the plastic handle of a screwdriver or a small phenolic mallet and tap along your side decks, around every stanchion base, around the cabin top winches, and along the edges of the coach roof. Listen, solid, dry laminate rings back at you with a sharp, hard knock, almost like tapping a dinner plate. Wet or delaminated core answers with a dull, flat thud like tapping a wet cardboard box. Move in a grid, tap every few inches, and mark the dead spots with a piece of tape. Do the same around every deck fitting because water always enters at a fastener. Then go below and look up at the underside of the deck for brown staining or a sag around the hardware. While you're down there, look hard at your chain plates where they pass through the deck. Rust-colored streaks weeping down the bulkhead, a lifted or cracked bead of sealant, or a spongy feel around the slot, those are the early tells that water is tracking down into your structure. None of this costs you anything but an afternoon, and it tells you whether your boat is aging honestly or hiding a bill. I've had owners run this tap test and find a soft patch the size of a dinner plate they never knew was there, and catching it early is the difference between a weekend rebed and a full recore. That same test is exactly how you separate the honest listings from the polished ones on any boat you're shopping. And if you want to go even deeper into this methodology before we get to the next contender, I've put everything into a series of books that walk you through the full process. In Sail Smart, Deep Water, and Sail Clear, I cover hull verification, resin history, hidden cost frameworks, and the exact questions to ask before you ever hand over $1, the kind of detail that simply doesn't fit in a single video. If that sounds like the resource you've been missing, check the description below and grab the one that matches where you are in your buying journey. Now, with that foundation in place, let's get back to the boat that looks the best in photographs and forces the hardest questions in person. The Tartan 37, this is where the pedigree gets serious, because the Tartan 37 carries a design credit from Sparkman and Stevens, the firm behind some of the most respected sailing yachts ever drawn, and Tartan built it in Grand River, Ohio, starting in 1976. More than 480 of them were built, which is a lot for a boat this capable. You'll see them listed from $35,000 to $55,000, and the listings love to name drop that Sparkman and Stevens lineage. The Tartan 37 earns most of that praise. It sails beautifully, it balances well, and the centerboard version lets you gunk hole in thin water and then drop the board for real upwind performance offshore. On the criterion of all-around sailing ability, this boat outpoints the Cape Dory and outclasses the Catalina, and it does it while still being a proper sea-kindly cruiser. For a lot of buyers, this is the sweet spot of the whole comparison. But every boat on this list has a hidden cost, and the Tartan hides two. First, that centerboard. The board pivots on a pin inside a trunk, and the pennant that raises it runs through hardware that lives its whole life underwater. When the pin corrodes or the pennant parts, you are hauling the boat and dropping the board, and that's a job that can run several $1,000s and a chunk of your season. Second, and this is the one the listings never mention, the Tartan 37 of this era used an iron keel on many hulls and iron rusts. It weeps, rust stains, it swells, and eventually you're grinding, treating, and refairing the keel, another job that climbs past a couple $1,000s fast. The keel bolts on an older iron keel deserve a hard look, because that's structure holding lead to your boat in a seaway. So the Tartan wins on sailing joy and loses points on two maintenance systems that a photograph will never show you. Notice the pattern building across all 5 boats. The purchase price tells you almost nothing. The real ranking hides in the systems that don't photograph. The core you can't see, the keel you can't reach, the board buried in a trunk. Someone profited from a comparison nobody ran, and the listing was written to keep it that way, to keep your eyes on the shine and off the bill. Which brings me to the boat everyone told me would win this whole thing before I even started. The legend, the one with a reputation so strong that buyers pay a premium just to say they own one. And it's exactly this boat where I found the trap that changed my entire verdict. The Valiant 40. Robert Perry designed it, and it launched in 1973 as one of the boats that basically invented the performance cruiser category. A genuine blue water passage maker that people have sailed around the world. The reputation is earned. The hull shape, the canoe stern, the way it carries sail and tracks across an ocean, all of it is the real thing. Clean examples list anywhere from $55,000 to well over $90,000, and owners will tell you it's worth every cent. I believed the legend too, until I went digging into why some Valiants smelled faintly of something chemical below decks and showed blistering unlike anything on the other boats. And here's the buried finding that no glossy listing will ever put in bold. On a range of Valiant 40s and 40s, 2 built roughly between 1976 and the early 1980s, the builder used a fire-retardant resin in the hull layup. That resin reacted over the years and produced severe, persistent hull blistering, not the little cosmetic pimples you sand and forget, but deep blistering that keeps coming back no matter how many times it's ground out and refaired. Owners have chronicled this for decades. It became known in the community as the blister boat era, and it turned one of the greatest cruising designs ever drawn into a lottery based purely on the year and yard that built your specific hull. Think about what that means for your money. 2 Valiant 40s can sit side by side at the same dock, same length, same designer, same rig, same asking price. One was built in a good year with standard resin, and it's a $60,000 boat that will outlive you. The other came out of the fire-retardant resin era, and that boat can need a full hull peel, where a yard grinds the entire outer skin off below the waterline, dries the laminate for months, and relaminates the surface, a job that runs $20,000 to over $35,000. Same photos, same broker enthusiasm, wildly different truth. So, the boat that was supposed to walk away with this comparison instead delivered the single most important lesson in the whole investigation, and it's this. The honest way into buying used is not choosing the right model, it's verifying the right hull. And that is exactly the verdict I promised you at the start, so let me hand it to you in a form you can actually use this week. Here is the finale, the thing the sellers had every reason to bury and one credible source preserved for anyone willing to dig. The deciding factor across all 5 of these boats is not the badge on the transom. It's the build history of the individual hull in front of you, and you can pin it down before you spend $1 on a survey. Start with the hull identification number, the string molded into the transom or stamped near the stern. On boats built from late 1972 onward, that number encodes the builder and the model year, and it tells you exactly when your specific hull was laid up, not when the model was designed, not when it was sold, but the real year the fiberglass went into the mold. For the Valiant, that single number tells you whether you're looking at a fire-retardant resin hull from that troubled window or a clean one from before or after it. For the Tartan, it tells you whether you're in the iron keel years. For the Pearson and the Catalina, it dates the deck core construction, so you know how many years that balsa has had to soak. Then you take that year and you cross it against the Owners Association and the class form for that exact model, because the people who have kept these boats for 30 years have already documented every bad batch, every resin change, every yard that cut a corner in a specific season. That archive is free. It is written by owners who profit nothing from your purchase, which makes it the opposite of the listing. The blister era of the Valiant is written down. The soft deck years of the production boats are written down. The keel issues are written down. Every trap in this video was preserved by someone who refused to let it stay buried, and all of it is sitting there waiting for you to type in a model in a year. So the honest ranking, the one I actually stand behind after all of this, looks nothing like a simple best to worst list, and that's the point. If you want the cheapest way onto the water this season and you'll stay near the coast, the Catalina 30 wins, and I won't apologize for saying it. If you want a tough hull that will outlast you and you can live with a slow, cozy boat, the Cape Dory 36 takes it. If you want the best all-around sailor and you'll verify that centerboard and keel, the Tartan 37 is the one I'd sail the farthest with the biggest grin. If you want a serious ocean boat and you refuse to overpay for hidden core repair, the Pearson 365 rewards a careful buyer. And if you want the legend, the Valiant 40, then the model was never the question. The whole number is the whole game, and now you know to ask for it first. That's the edge. Not a favorite boat, a method. You stop shopping models and you start verifying hulls, and the moment you do that, no listing on earth can hide the bill from you anymore. If you take one feeling away from all this, let it be this. You are not gambling 6 figures on a photograph and a broker's smile ever again. You walk down that dock with a screwdriver, a moisture meter, and a hull number, and you already know more about that boat than the person trying to sell it to you. That is what it feels like to buy from strength instead of hope. You're the kind of buyer who wants the real verdict, not the sales pitch, or you wouldn't have made it this far, and I built this whole comparison for exactly that person. So tell me something in the comments. Which 2 boats are you weighing against each other right now, and what's the year on the hull you're circling? Name them for me. And tell me where you're watching from and where you dream of sailing, because a coastal buyer and an ocean buyer should not be shopping the same list. And I'll tell you straight, if I think you're looking at the right pair, if you want to stand with the buyers who demand the honest comparison, the one the brokers will never run, subscribe and stay in this group, because the next investigation goes after the 3 most overpriced cruising boats on the market right now, the ones whose reputations are running $20,000 ahead of what the surveys actually show. I've already found the numbers. I just have to show you where they're hiding. I'll be honest, this was just the overview. Inside the cruising compass, I take you deeper, the model by model teardown, every survey and refit log I dug through laid out plainly. And you can ask me your own question. A real person answers, me, myself. Not some machine. Thousands of sailboat buyers like you are already here with me. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel anytime, 1 click, no risk.